So I saw this cartoon made by Jim Bob the other day. I say cartoon, but nowadays everything's a fucking meme, right? Meh. You'll make an argument somewhere online, and in response, some genius will post a link to a meme or the meme itself, right? What? Cat got your tongue, homie? Meh. Meh. Anyway, I saw this cartoon the other day. This isn't it, I'm sorry, but in a similar vein, made by Jim Bob, once again, where there was an unmasked guy in a crowd of people wearing masks, and apparently, I don't remember exactly, but he had said something to one of his masked counterparts, I guess, or not. And the response from the masked gentleman was, Do you do you know how difficult it would be to fool everyone? Right? Do you know how difficult it would be to get everybody to play along? Something along those lines, right? If you didn't get it, just turn off the video and go somewhere else. Right? That's so. Neil deGrasse Tyson, I saw a little interview with him the other day, was being asked about the claim that the moon landing was fake, right? And that was exactly his response. Do you know how many people it would have taken? How many people you'd have to convince and fool for this to be true? Right? Like, I mean, it's not even an argument, right? That's not a logical argument, bro. It's completely skirting the fucking question. Meanwhile, there he is, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't understand basic logic, obviously, or refuses to acknowledge it, right? And yet, he is some kind of a scientist, supposedly, and some great mind, supposedly, but doesn't even get basic logic, right? I mean, do you see it yet, right? Now, how was everyone fooled, right? Well, that's how everyone was fooled. By rooting out the ability to comprehend basic logic, right? The ability to speak truth. That's how simple this shit is. That's how you could control everyone, right? Nobody knows what is true because no one speaks the truth. No one's fucking logical, right? Nobody can get to the bottom of anything because everyone's fucking dumb. I don't care how brilliant they may be in any one specialized area, right? If their foundation isn't based in truth, then they could, whatever the fuck comes out of their mouth, they could shove it up their ass. Just because they happen to be right sometimes, get the fuck out of here. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So, this idea that, like, it's so difficult to fool so many people, right? Well, yeah, it is. That's why it's taken them hundreds, if not thousands of years. And this is just a culmination of what you get when you demoralize society, right? Slowly but surely, people have been demoralized. They can't speak the truth anymore. They don't know what logic is. They don't get basic fucking logic. And that's how you get, well, that's how you fool everybody, duh. So you got the school system, you have all these various industrial complexes, right? And industries just paying people to be a certain way, to follow a certain narrative, right? To have quote unquote their truth, right? This truth doesn't exist, right? Postmodernist nonsense. That's that's how few people can control the few people that don't reject logic. Maybe ostensibly, maybe on TV, maybe in the public's eye they reject it, but behind closed doors, right? These people don't reject truth or logic. They just, right? That's how they've been able to dominate and conspire against the fuck down majority, right? Huge majority. So, yeah, don't expect the sheep to, understand what's going on, obviously. Like that's the whole point, right? You're a fucking sheep, if you are, right? So that's why you don't understand this shit, right? Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's why you you can't speak basic logic, right? You don't understand basic logic, meaning it's easy to fool you. I don't understand how you could fool everybody. Well, that's why you don't understand how people could be fooled. Duh. Anyway, so yeah, after that long ass drawn out introduction, um this the whole Ukraine thing, yeah, well, it's basically another fake war, right? Another fake fucking war. Now look, I'm not saying that rockets or bombs or whatever aren't being dropped on certain specific targets here and there. I believe there are, right? I'm not saying that, but you have all these news media reports clearly faking the news, right? Showing you pictures of the war-torn Donbass region, which they refused to show you pictures of for 8 years. And this is probably one of the reasons why, right? They were saving those photos for when it was convenient, right? Showing you these residential, bombed out residential buildings, right? Looking like fucking Cabrini Green, basically. Um, you know, with the implication being that, this just happened and Putin did it, right? For example. So, yeah, there's clearly some kind of, at least I believe so, military operation going on. But most of this so-called war, or whatever you want to call it, is happening in people's minds, right? It's happening on TV. On another channel, I was just talking about how you can have people at a boxing match in that specific case, or not even a boxing weigh-in, or a concert or whatever, right? Supposedly looking at the event itself through their phone, right? People no longer even care to look at reality and perceive reality for what it is. Even in so-called real life, right? People are allowing electronics, machines, what have you, to interpret reality for them when they can just look at the reality itself. They refuse to do that, right? They look at it through a device, right? Which interprets what they see for them. It does. However, subtly or maybe not at all. Anyway, so what the fuck was my point? Yeah, this, right? You see a lot of comments on some of these war reports, be it CNN or RT or whatever, and people are just like, I pray for my brothers and sisters in Ukraine and all this other like virtue signaling bullshit, right? Um, no civilians are getting targeted, right? That's not happening. If anything is, I mean, yeah, I saw explosions on TV too, and I saw comments from people who say they live in Ukraine who are confirming that this shit is happening. But unless you see this shit with your own eyes, right? Can you really be sure that it's happening? But I believe it is to some degree. But then looking at it through the lens of social media and mass media, whatever the hell media, right? Your cell phone, the conflict just gets blown way the fuck out of proportion, right? So, you know, obviously conspiracies are real. Conspiracy theory is really just a euphemism these days for spoiler alert, right? So, like, anyone who still uses that term to discredit what somebody else is saying, not that it ever really was an argument, but you're really gone, man. Like, and I'm not saying that every conspiracy theory is a reality, obviously, but like to still just dismiss those, like, you're a fucking sheep, right? You have to be. Let me take a sip of my tea. So, but then there's the other extreme, people who, oh, they just go so deep into all the conspiracy theories, and they act like they have it all figured out, and like, look, if you make money from this shit, that I could understand why you would go so deep into all that stuff. And there are some people who go really, really deep, but you know, they're not even really talking about conspiracies, because uh, I know they would be relegated to the realm of conspiracy theory, like someone like Alex Jones, for example, right? But when you really think about it, like, a lot of what he's, and I haven't followed him through and through to know exactly and everything that he said, but a lot of what he said, especially what's happening in the world right now, well, it was true. And he always said, this is why, right? We have these documents, blah, blah, blah. And he would show you the documents, or this is what he and so said, and this is where they come from. This is what, like, he would give you evidence, right? So, and he would cite books and papers and things that these people said. So if it's out in the open, it's no longer a conspiracy, right? A conspiracy is something nefarious that's happening behind closed doors, right? It's not. Is it really still a conspiracy? Well, it's just a plot, right? It's a plan, and it's out in the fucking open. You just gotta open your fucking eyes and pay attention. So anyway, but then there are some people who don't really know much about this shit, and they just like they go so deep into these conspiracies, and like, it's not Bill Gates who's in power, it's these shadow forces behind Bill Gates. Putin isn't really in power, it's all these other people. Like, yeah, I mean, okay, maybe, like, to me all that shit is just boring, and it's just this like rabbit hole that makes no sense really going down. Unless again, you're just duping people to pay you money for some of the nonsense that you spew, then I guess it is what it is, right? But like, the average person doesn't give a shit. It makes it so much less believable when you start going down these fucking rabbit holes and making it so complicated with all these different players involved, and in many cases you're probably correct, right? Talking about these intricate webs and connections of all these various, corporations, organizations, millionaires, philanthropists, and all that other stuff. Like, you'll turn off a lot of people, man, because they'll just be like, okay, that could never happen. How could they ever organized like that without anyone noticing, right? Even though there's someone noticing and pointing it out to them. So it is what it is, right? I hope I'm making sense, but you know, um, I think it's, well, good, instructive, and instrumental to just simplify this shit, right, for a lot of people, because most of the shit is really simple, right? So what some people like to call a conspiracy theory, I mean, what's so conspiratorial about world leaders meeting together and discussing shit, right? What's so hidden about that? It's on TV, right? There's photographers there, there's witnesses. Like, the shit happens all the time, right? So for example, you have, whether they met or not, I don't know, and I don't give a fuck, the president or whoever the fuck he is of Ukraine, right? This is how much I give a shit about geopolitics, right? Because the shit's not that difficult to just to understand what's going on a grand scheme of things, right? Without getting into bogged down in all these fucking details. Because I got pigs to feed, I got holes to dig in the ground, and I got things to put up. So forgive me. Anyway, um, right? I don't know if those presidents ever met, like Putin and Zelensky, or whatever the fuck his name is. But it was communicated to him, the president of Ukraine, what would happen if he did this, and that, right? It was communicated to the West. Putin met with Western leaders and said, if this continues, this is what will happen, right? Putin met with Biden and told him, look, I have to do this because I told you I would. And Biden says, well, if you do this, then this is what we will do, right? So these people all over the world, all these world leaders always meet, shake hands, and they basically say, okay, if A, then B, right? And what the fuck are they doing? What are they doing? Well, they're plotting, right? And then they shake hands and then they leave, right? If you make this move on this grand chessboard, this is the move that I will make, right? So these people know what will happen, right? If they do what they do, this is what will happen, right? What is that? What is that called? Well, that's called fucking planning, right? And moving the world in a certain direction. So it was well known, right, that if the war in Ukraine was allowed to go on, Putin said, and look, I don't give a shit if who exactly is behind Putin, right? If it's Putin himself who's been brought into the cabal and is working with all these other world leaders, right? Klaus Schwab, so on and so forth, whether he agrees on everything that, this or that guy has to say. Like this, again, intricate, unimportant, boring details, right? This shit's really simple. It really is that simple, right? These people, they all meet together and they discuss what will happen, right? I'm not saying that, there are various options, I suppose, right? If A, then B. If C, then D, right? If A2, then maybe C, right? Like I'm not saying that it's like all fixed and rigid, right? And then there are other forces, other interests who have a lot of money and influence who don't like A2 and they just want A, right? They want A leading to B, not A2 leading to C, right? So then they do whatever's in their power, right? By influencing public opinion or even politicians' opinions or all these other powerful people's opinions by means of the media and propaganda and so on and so forth. And they, right? Like this isn't that fucking difficult. These motherfuckers meet and they discuss what they're gonna do. They present each other with options, and when it's all said and done, they shake hands and they agree. Right? They all know what's going to happen. There might be, a couple of different doors to open, but ultimately they know all the ins and outs, and they know all the potential pathways, and there are generally just a couple, maybe three, right? They know 2 or 3 different courses of action, and they know that if I do this, that's what will happen, right? So the president of Ukraine knew for 8 fucking years that if he kept doing what he kept doing, Putin would invade or have his special military operation, right? It was communicated to him. If you keep behaving this way, this is what will happen, right? The West knew this. If you keep putting, your weaponry closer and closer to Russia, this is what will happen, right? So if they didn't want war, right? So the excuse is like, well, we don't want war, so we're gonna put them rockets there or defense shields or whatever the fuck, right? Because we don't want war. When the other side is telling them, if you want war, this is what's going to happen, right? So are we to look at what they're saying, or are we to look at what they're doing, right? Clearly they want war. The West wants war, right? And Putin probably does too, right? Why is he going into war if he doesn't? So they all agree, right? They all want war. Is it really that difficult? I mean, I know I'm way oversimplifying everything. I know that. But this is ultimately what it comes down to, right? So, and now you have Putin and Lavrov and all these other scumbags coming out and saying that, oh, it's, we have to protect the human rights of the Russians in Ukraine, the native Russian speakers, and even the Ukrainian people. We have to uphold democracy. Right? Like the same fucking rhetoric that the West uses. And then they call the West the hypocrites, which they are, but so is Russia, right? What? They didn't mandate the vax passport? Mandatory vaccination, social distancing, stay-at-home slave. Well, the great defender of human freedom, Russia didn't they mandate all that shit, right? just like every other country on the planet, and those that didn't, well, look what happened to those presidents, right, in Africa. Or look at how they had to pressure someone like Lukashenko, for example, right, to basically fall in line. So, like, what are you doing talking about caring, giving a fuck about human lives and human rights when when you're at the same time you're taking them away from your beloved Russians in your own country, right? These people are fucking hypocrites. If journalists come out against you, well, bad things happen to them, right? You arrest protesters, throw them in prison, and you got all these Westerners, right? Pro-Western, pro freedom Westerners going, yay, Putin, fucking zombies, right? Demoralized, illogical. So this whole like narrative that Putin gives a fuck about human rights, what? The fuck are you talking about? Clearly, that you don't give a shit about those people. They were there for 8 years, right? The Russians are now saying, for 8 years you tormented our people. Why'd you let them? What, the death toll wasn't high enough to make for good headlines? Is that what happened? Right? Or poor Jewish brothers are getting bombarded by these Muslim heathens, right? Well, why the fuck did you put them there? Why did you steal those people's land and put your quote unquote your own people there, right? Well, why? Because they need a sacrificial lamb, right? So they can go to war. Why? Well, I mean, war is profit, I guess, right? I mean, we know, however you convince these world leaders to follow, right, the agenda, I don't give a fuck. But we know what the agenda is, right? Destroy economies. Well, what's a great way to destroy economy? While at the same time build up maybe a certain economy, right? That's what happened to the United States in World War II. They destroyed European economy, and U.S. profited off of that. That's why there was such a great economic boom in the United States. It ain't fucking capitalism, you dumb fucks, right? It's funny how whatever's clever, that's capitalism, and whatever ain't clever, that's not capitalism. Get the fuck out of here, man. They destroyed the European economy, right? And that vacuum was filled by the U.S. economy, right? And the same thing's gonna happen again, except this time it's probably gonna be the Western economies, and China's gonna profit, and maybe to some degree Russia. I don't know, maybe not, right? So however you convince these people to follow this plan, right? These world leaders, or however you provoke them into doing this shit, clearly they're working at least to a certain degree toward the same agenda, right? Because they're all implementing the same fucking rules, right? The same new world order. They're all implementing this shit while at the same time talking about human rights, right? Like, get the. Are we still falling for that nonsense? Like, how fucking dumb do you have to be to still fall for that rhetoric? I don't get it, man. Anyway, at the end of the day, whatever happens in Ukraine and other conflicts like that will follow, right? This is how fucking dumb this shit is, right? Or how transparent it is. Go listen to some of the reports from people in Kiev or other places in Ukraine, right? There's this girl giving an interview saying, we were told at 4 a.m. we would be bombarded or attacked, and we were attacked at 4 a.m., right? Like, okay. Right? For 8 years they've been telling us this is going to happen. What the fuck are you acting surprised for, right? Like, they gave you ample notice, and they even gave you the time and the date and down to the hour when this shit was gonna happen, right? Like, this is just so fucking blatantly orchestrated and planned, with everyone more or less moving in the same direction, right? Like, did the Ukrainian president really have to ban the Russian language? Really? When it's so fucking similar to Ukrainian, right? And so many people in his country speak the language. Did he really? Was it just like his ego? Really? Russians, Ukrainians, Poles, they're essentially the same people, right? I'm talking about nationalism, right? They're essentially the same people. Was it really? It's really that important for him to oppress these people like that? And maybe at the 13th hour, he could have been like, because he had so much warning, right? They even gave him the time when the invasion was gonna happen, right? Maybe he could have just been repented, yeah, and said, okay, Putin, let's all right, let's negotiate. You know what? I'm gonna stop doing these mean things to these innocent people. I'm gonna swallow my ego, swallow my pride, and let's not do this, right? Why do more people have to die? Let's fix this problem, right? No, 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 to the bitter end, right? Like, well, clearly he wanted his country bombed, right? Clearly he did. Whatever motivated him to get to that point, like clearly he wanted it to happen because he knew what he had to do, and it wouldn't have been that difficult, right? Not to say that Russia wouldn't have found some other excuse to go in and do, right? But like he gave them plenty of excuses, right? And like stupid shit. Is it really that important to ban the Russian language? Really? It was that important to you, huh? And look at where it got you. Well, exactly where they told you it was going to get you, and you still went along with the plan, right? Putin, Biden met, and Biden said, look, Putin, if you do this, we're going to sanction your country, and your people are going to suffer, right? And he still went along with the plan, right? Because he cares so much about his people, right? So, what's going to precipitate from this? Well, energy prices are going to go up, right? Gas, gasoline, natural gas, uh, all this human energy and effort is going to be diverted from the things that, make society good, I guess, into bad, right? All these people's efforts are going to be put into war or getting the fuck out of there, right? Refugees, we're going to have Putin, who is so against um, ostensibly anyway, so against this multiculti nonsense, right? And preserving the national integrity of this and that, whatever the fuck have you, right? Nation state is essentially sending. For now, it's probably just thousands, but maybe ultimately millions of Ukrainians into Central and Western Europe, right? Creating a refugee crisis. Like, really, people, really, we're still falling for this nonsense. I guess so. You know, it's gonna wreck the economy, right? I don't know exactly, but Ukraine has always, if it's still that, right? But it has always been like the breadbasket of Central Europe, if not all of Europe, right? Central and Eastern Europe. Very fertile soil, very agricultural country. They produce a lot of food, right? So, well, put a stop to at least a lot of that, right? Disrupt all of that, and wheat prices are going to go up, right? Food prices are going to go up. So energy prices are going to go up, which means food prices are going to go up, and then food prices are going to go up, which means energy prices are going to go up, and food price, like it's just right. Western Europe is going to feel this. All these sanctions on Russia, right? Well, you're stifling global economy, not just like putting sanctions on Russia. You're fucking yourself too. Well, are we going to act like you're getting nothing from Russia, right? You're getting nothing from China. Really, we're gonna act like you're just like we don't have a global economy. Really, is that what we're doing here, right? So what's the plan? And what's to destroy the economy ultimately, so you could bring in capitalism, right? The new economy, new world order. You know, humans being the ultimately the resource, right? Slavery, ultimate slavery, new digital blockchain based currency that will facilitate all of that, right? Human trafficking, essentially, or maybe the trafficking of human bodily functions, every single one of your thoughts, while you stay locked in your fucking tiny little coffin apartment, right? And everything else about you will be just trafficked and used for profit and to create. And that's what they hope to do anyway, right? AI and transhumans, whatever the fuck, right? This and that may have been the case back in the day, right, where war was used as a means of depopulation. Like, that's still probably partly it, but I mean these days it's so easy. If they want to kill people, it's so easy to kill millions of people without them even knowing, right? I mean, well, I don't know what the percentage is. At least half the world out there just hiked up their fucking sleeve and allowed the authorities to inject them with an unknown substance, right? Like, these are just facts, right? I am convinced these vaccination campaigns, they could have a line of people going in the door to get vaccinated, and then a line of people, or maybe train cars taking corpses out, right, out the back, literally showing you what's going on. And a lot of those people will stay in that fucking line, right? I mean, they showed you hospitals, people going to the hospital and being taken out in body bags, right? That's what they showed you all over the fucking TV. So what did people do? When they got a cough, they went into the fucking hospital. You know what I mean? That's, you know, this is, yeah, this is where we find ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. So, long fucking story short, this is just another fake fucking war. I'm not saying that there aren't bombs being dropped or rockets shot at certain specific targets with cameras waiting to record all of that. I'm not saying that's not happening. It probably is. I believe it is. But it's blown the fuck way out of proportion. And the goal ultimately isn't what's being told to you, right? And you once again have this false dialectic. You have the West and the East spinning completely different fucking story when ultimately at the end of the day the goal is altogether completely different, right? And for the time being, in my opinion, is to just destroy economies and make everyone's fucking life a living hell, ultimately, right? So, shout out to all the fucking zombies out there. Rah, rah, Russia, right? Rah, rah, West. You guys are a bunch of fucking degenerate slaves, ultimately, right? Logic is just, whew, like, way above your fucking pay grade. You know what I mean? Speaking the truth, forget about it. You've lost the ability to do that, right? How could they have ever convinced you of all this bullshit, right? By making sure that you would never know that you could be convinced. Obviously. Thanks for watching.